Hey guys, hey, welcome back to the channel here. Hey, it's Rich here with Yellowstone Post Frame. Hey, today we will be going over top 5 problems customers face when buying a pole barn or a post frame building. So I'm going to start off with number 1. I'm going to go from, the last one. Number 5 is going to be the most important one, but like kind of go in steps of how you guys should go about it. I would say, when you're facing these problems, if you're thinking about buying a post frame building or a pole barn, where do you start? And like, what are the problems you're going to face? And what's kind of the first problem that I would face first? So, first of all, I would go into do research. And that's why the number one is, you don't know what you can build. Like, if you don't know what you can build, that's probably going to be, first of all, if it's a shop or something, I would always go, what are you trying to put inside of it? So if it's something like a camper, you're probably going to need at least a 14 tall door. So, and then you want to leave at least 2 foot of clearance for your door to roll up. So if you're doing a 14 tall door, do a 16 tall sidewall building. And the same goes if you're doing a smaller garage, you want 10-foot tall doors or 8-foot tall doors, then you bump it up 2 foot and that's your sidewall height. That way you have plenty of room to play with. There's definitely some ways you can get around that a little bit. Bolted trusses and then maybe put the door in the center, and then you can do 12 tall sidewalls and 12 tall door in the middle. But those typically end up being a little bit more expensive because it's a little bit more custom. But I mean, you can kind of do a lot with the stuff that you want. I would just you know learn some of these stuff, and then yeah, I definitely, like I say, the biggest thing would be what are you putting inside of it, and that way you can figure out your square footage, your height, and all that stuff. And then also know that foundation, what kind of foundations do there's actually been, they used to be just posts in the ground and you build it like that. They're getting to be a lot more sophisticated. You can get the posts have 50-year warranties on them usually nowadays. I think some even have 60. And but nowadays you can even get like post sleeves on them and stuff like that to protect them a little bit more. But also you can literally keep them out of the ground with like bracket and pier systems, or a monolithic pad if you're going to do with a wet set brackets or dry set, those permacolumn brackets. That's a great way to go nowadays. I don't know, I still have a little bit of, in a real windy area, will those hold up as good? They're up to code and stuff, so I build them a lot, and I've never had an issue with them. So there's different ways of doing your foundation. You can go with just know that the cheapest way is always going to be posts in the ground, because then you don't have to do your footer or your monolithic pad or your piers, and that eats up a lot of concrete and labor. And that's why pole barns are cheaper usually, because then you can just put your posts in the ground, and that's carrying your weight, and then you can pour a slab on the inside. So that would be the foundation side of it. So there's different ways you can do it. Just depends on what you want to do and what you're using it for, really. And then also know that when you're pricing these out, when you're spanning the truss width, it's always going to be the most expensive. And then height, going up in height is going to be the cheapest to get you. You can go up to 16, 18 foot and do 2 stories. The only thing that I would, when it comes to heights, is if you're in a real windy area, I would probably keep it at 12 foot or lower. Just, kind of same idea as not trying to build a 2 story house, because it can get, catch a lot of wind on those big buildings up there. So, or if you do want to go it, definitely, put like OSB on it for sure behind the metal and just sheet it, and just, you're going to have to spend more, but definitely, beef it up in that scenario. And then obviously, with heights being the cheapest, you can go lengthwise, long ways. If you're going, instead of going 60 by 60, maybe do a 40 by 80. It's going to be a lot cheaper per square foot. Just for a little context, like a 40-foot truss around here is usually around at $300, and an 80-foot truss is probably around $1,200. I mean, you're only going twice as far, and you're spending a lot more money. So it really just kind of really gets expensive after about 40 foot is really what it does. And then also, like, know your snow loads. If you have snow loads, you might not be able to go much more than 60 foot, and that's really going to depend, you know. So I would definitely check into that and know what you can build in your area. Here in the Yellowstone region, we do have a lot of snow loads in towards the mountains, so you know, check those. I would call just your city office. I'm sure they could tell you, and check all that stuff. You know what you're going to get into when you're going to be building this, because it can make a big difference where you're at. So let's go on to tip number two, or the problem number two. Not really knowing, you know, how it's built, and you know, how is post frame built. You know, like there's so many different ways of building a post frame building. You know, you can build it with trusses every 8-10 foot, and your trusses are right on your posts. I'm personally not a fan of that. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I just don't think it's, you know, I overbuild. I tend to overbuild. I don't want mine to have any issues. I don't want my customers to have any issues. I feel like it's a lighter way of building it. I feel like you can probably get a pole barn cheaper that way if that's what you're after. But I think there's multiple different ways of building one. I'm not gonna sit here and say one way is the highway, you know, my way or the highway, but just know, and that can depend on what you're after. You know, it really kind of depends on what you're trying to do with it, you know, and I would just figure that out for yourselves. You know, we do a header system with trusses every 4 foot minimum, you know, sometimes every 2 foot, depending on what we're doing. So I would definitely, you know, check into that. There's so many different ways of doing it, you know, and most times, you know, this thing, you pretty much get what you pay for. If you want a light building, you know, you can probably go to a company and builds them a little bit lighter. If you want a more high end stuff, or you want someone that'll really, you know, is really built, definitely not going to go anywhere, you know, probably go to a company that will build them a little bit differently. We tend to stick on, you know, I'll build them about any way somebody wants them to be built, but there's definitely areas where I'm like, you know, I won't build them that light, especially if you're in a really windy area. I go back to that a lot because we deal with that a lot here. You know, somebody, you know, says, you know, they want a building built, but you know, I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to build it at least to the you know, to this standard, because I don't want it to fall over. So, you know, that's, you know, when I'm in doubt about something, I just overbuild it, and I just want to be sure that, you know, that you're getting a good product. So I would definitely, do some research on how they're built and what you're looking for. If you're just looking for a simple little shed, an open-sided hay shed or something, you know, that you don't really care, you know, if it's just, you know, built kind of light, you know, I would definitely check into all that stuff. You know, check into your metal thickness. You know, what are you looking for? Um, Everybody kind of has their own opinion on a lot of that stuff, and just, you know, just check into like exactly how they're built. You know, we build, you know, posts in the ground, and most times, and then we do concrete around the bottom of the posts in the ground with uplift protection, and then it's sitting on concrete as well underneath the post. So you get kind of that, you know, it's locked in, and we do that mainly around here because we do get some high winds, and I just want to make sure that it's, you know, not gonna fall over and stuff like that. Problem number three, in my opinion, would be finding a bank that gives you financing if you're going to finance it. And the reason I bring this up and the reason I have it on here is because a lot of our customers ask us about financing. You know, a lot of times, you know, it's a pretty big chunk. They're not, you know, lumber's not as cheap as it used to be. So you know, it's a little bit more of a bigger chunk than what it used to be. So a lot of people are financing, and especially barn dominiums and stuff that we build. So I would say, you know, I called a bank and talked to them about it, and their main thing is, especially if you got to live in it, they can't finance it if it doesn't stay, the posts don't stay, you know, out of the ground. They can't build. It's got to have a solid foundation. So you got to probably do like the footer system, and you can do brackets, those permacolumn brackets. You can do that, or you can stick build it, and you know, maybe still do barn metal on the outside, and finish out the inside more, maybe more of a barn look if you want like that barn dominium style. But just know that going into that they won't allow you to, you know, put posts in the ground, which can raise the cost, usually raises the cost, because then if you're doing concrete or stuff on the inside, you got to have your footer, and that, you know, it's going to be more expensive. But there's an option. The other thing is, they said, is, you know, usually when people want to build, these barns on their property, but they want to finance it. If they have a property, they just kind of take out a loan against the property and use that as kind of like an equity, and then they don't really care as much what you're loaning it for. If you want to build a little room in it, then in your shop, and have somebody stay in it, they don't really care about that. So those are just some problems that a lot of people face, and the reason I brought it up too is the fact that I used to own one of those houses, and I had really trouble selling it. I had to get a cash buyer because banks just really didn't like them. They said they don't have comparables, and they didn't really know how to go about pricing it out, and putting a value on it. So that's, I guess, their biggest problem with it. So it's definitely a little harder to get financing for post frame. So I just thought I'd bring that up. And then, so let's go on to number 4, which is going to be the code requirements. Know your codes. Know if you're living in city limits, know what you can do. Go talk to your city. We've had to deal a lot with that here in our city. And then also, even if you live out in the country, you still need a permit. It's usually like a $50 permit around here. You can build it and you can go in later and get it, but you can get in trouble for it. They don't really enforce it too well out in these rural areas, but I'll just give you some insight. The main thing is know your neighbor. If your neighbors might not like you, you may want to make sure you're good, because we had somebody that we built for, and he thought he was good and lived outside of city limits, and he thought he was good and didn't need it, and so he went ahead and we started building it. So the neighbor called him in, so they came out and shut us down. They said, no, he needs a permit before you guys can build. So he went ahead and got his permit, and we had to move the building a little bit because he had some requirements, and he thought it was good. And we tend to we now tell customers, our customers, like, make sure that you have this stuff in place beforehand. That way, when we show up to build, we're good. And most times around here, if you live outside of the cities, you can probably just build it and go in and tell them what you did, and they'll charge you 50 to 100 bucks, and you're good to go. But I would definitely get it in order, at least know what you can and can't do. And also, just another thing is, call in your locates, stuff like that. And the other thing too is, sometimes in the city limits and stuff, and in towns, like, they don't allow you to build post frame, maybe, especially if it's for residential. Kind of same idea as the financing rule. It's got to be on a solid foundation. Usually, just go talk to your city, know what you can and can't do, because sometimes they don't allow some of that stuff in their town, or some of them don't allow mail that runs up and down. They want sideways siding. It's like they have these kind of like an HOA stuff. That's another thing. If you live in an HOA, know what HOA allows you to do, and that would be another good thing to check out. And also, most times in city limits, you're going to need engineering. So know that stuff. That's going to be an extra cost. That usually costs you an extra couple grand. We do it a lot, so we get like a discount now. But if you're doing it and you want to get engineer plans, or you're going to make your builder get engineer plans, he's probably going to charge you for it. So just know that stuff. That's going to be a city to city basis, kind of. Just go in and find out about that stuff. So that brings us to number 5, and this is going to be the biggest one. Knowing the builder, what kind of builder are you going to get, because trust me, not everybody is as trustworthy as they like to say they are. I'm sure we all know somebody that's gotten written off by a contractor, and I would say, to be honest, that happens a lot more in this area in Wyoming, because it's so easy to become a contractor, and I would say I hear a lot of stories, and it's like, you want to know that you're getting a good builder. Finding a good quality builder would probably be the biggest thing that you're going to run into. Once you do all your research, you find out what you want to do, then you're going to go find your contractor. And how do you find a good contractor, one you can trust? Well, first of all, I would look at reviews. I would see what people are talking about them. If you have somebody that that's used them or used somebody, talk to them about it. And then also, I feel like there's a lot of telling things, and this is stuff that I've learned through business. Just I I'd ask customers, what do you guys like? What do you like that we do, and what do you like that we don't do? And then I kind of figure out where people are coming from, what they want to see, and stuff like that. And some of the stuff is just self-explanatory. But I would say the biggest thing is when you do call them, do they get back to you? You know, do they have a great attitude? Are they willing to help you, or are you feeling like you're kind of a bother to them? Do they get you a quote in a timely fashion in a day or two? In my opinion, if somebody takes forever to get you a quote, they don't really care about you, and they're probably not going to care about getting your building done. They're probably not going to care about how good the building looks. Just some telling signs from the get go. So if somebody comes at you, has a great attitude, great customer service, they take care of you, they answer the phone, do all that stuff, that's a good sign. If it's not there, I'd say that's a pretty good sign that they're probably not going to care about much else. And then also, I would ask him. I would ask him all these other questions that we went through, and one of the other problems is if you don't really know what you want, or you don't really know exactly how they build and stuff, just ask them all this stuff like, how far are the truss spacing? Do you go every 4 foot? Do you go every 8 foot? Do you go, how do you, do your roof system? How do you do your bracing? Make them show you pictures and stuff like that, or like take you to a barn they've done before and stuff like that. What's your metal gauge? Is it 29? Is it 26? Just a lot of stuff. How far in the ground are your posts? What do you put around the bottoms of your posts? Like, how do you anchor this? How do you anchor that? How do you fasten this? How do you fasten that? What are your doors? Does this come with openers? Is the doors insulated? How do you do your insulation? It can be anything. Just, ask them all these details, and if they can't answer that stuff, or they don't want to help you with it, don't go with them, I would say. But that would be my biggest thing. Like, have some. There's usually when something bad happens, there's usually like kind of there was usually a warning light. So I would keep that in mind when you're going through these things. If somebody's helping you out, giving you information, being transparent, all that stuff, probably going to be a good fit. If not, I would definitely wouldn't go with them. And this can be, you can use this in any business. If you go in and you're trying to do business with somebody and they just don't seem to care about you, or they just have a horrible attitude, I don't do business with those people. I just wouldn't. And I would use that as a general idea of, when you're going about trying to find somebody to do something for you, because there's a lot of people out there who are willing to give you a great product, great service, and do it with a smile on their face, versus some other people who aren't. And that's the biggest, like, we don't have to deal with those people. So I would definitely I would definitely do some vetting. And like I said, here's another thing that some people think, it's a barn, you kind of slap it out. Well, not really. I mean, most times when when you're building somebody, if you're a customer and you get in a barn built, this is your dream barn or your dream garage. You spend a lot of time, going over this, and you spend a lot of thought, just putting a lot of your hard-earned money into it. You want somebody who cares about it and wants to give you your dream barn, or your dream home, or your dream garage, man cave, whatever, horse barn, whatever you're building. So I would definitely, I would say you could probably tell, right off the bat. I think I could tell from the first phone call, if they're, or, the first 24 hours or 48 hours, if they get back to you, or, stuff like that. So that's pretty much the end of it. The end of it there. I would say that's probably the biggest tip. When you go through all this stuff and the problems you're facing, and figuring out what you want, how, knowing all the stuff that you can do and can't do with the codes, and and even your area, if you live in an area where you don't have a lot of space. When you go through all that, bring all that information, then find you a good contractor to build it for you. Or if you want to do it yourself, we also provide kits for those people who want to tackle the project themselves, So you can also find a good kit supplier. But definitely check into, like, what their lumber is. Is it good quality? Is it bad? Check out the reviews, ask people, and just do a lot of that vetting process. And then I think you'll really get around that big problem of having somebody rip you off. So yeah, I think that's all I have for top 5 problems. If you guys have any questions, feel free to comment, and I would love to hear from you guys. If you have anything else that maybe I forgot or didn't add, or you've had one and you had issues, or just let me know, and then that way I'd be more than happy to answer them. I'll probably be doing more of these videos on some other stuff on post frame construction, on maybe stuff to consider or stuff like that. So I appreciate you guys all. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next video.